So this is part C. This is part C of the KhoodeelaarTV campaign, World Exclusive Diagnosis of Fleet Street. And this part, we are continuing with the diagnosis of the report in the Mail on Sunday about Carrie Simmons and her dog Dylan, who are running number 10. According to the claims made by Dominic Cummings. It says Cummings ally, but that is what is happening. It's Dominic Cummings. And what they're saying there is that, and they also include a piece about Tetla. Remember, the Tetla is the Tories' kind of in-house magazine, as it were. And the young readers of Tetla, or the young polled by Tetla, prefer Carrie Simmons to Boris Johnson as the political kind of head of the cabal. And Carrie Simmons is being described as being engaged in a plot. Next plot. And one aide, that is one staff of the propaganda unit at number 10 Downing Street, says that we are all a nest of singing birds. That is, all the tensions, etc., between the factions in number 10 are all leaking. And this is not quite the same thing as was happening when Tony B. Blair, remember how we are pronouncing it, B. Blair, not Blair, B-L-I-A-R, B. Blair. That is the edited version of his name that we edited in late 1997, especially after the kind of lunatic obsession that Blair had with publicity and self-promotion, which was heightened in in September 1997, immediately after the murder of Diana in the French city of Paris. And we gave him the name Blair because of his overstated kind of affinity with the murdered princess. He didn't use the word murder, but he knew she had been murdered. So accordingly, Blair asked Alistair Campbell to come up with a phrase that would grab the attention of the mourning public. I say mourning within quotation marks. And so he came up, Alistair Campbell, came up with the People's Princess. And it went on for almost all the period, all the years that Blair was in place. And Blair's regime was kind of hit from time to time by allegations of excessive grab of power by Cherie Booth, Blair's official wife. I say official because Blair had adventures outside of his marriage, which continued after he left the power, especially highlighted by the fact that he had a very widely publicized series of encounters, engagements with the Chinese origin wife of Rupert Dirty Murdoch in the USA. And that resulted, in fact, in the Dirty Digger divorcing Wendy Dang in a big bang of rejection. And that marked the end of the dirty kind of collaboration between Dirty Digger Murdoch and Tony Belair. These are all historic facts, but we created the actual description based on the facts. And we did that in order to prove by citing citable evidence, not conjecture, that Tony Belair was a liar and an adulterous liar at that, which was significant because the power that he allowed Sherry Blair or Sherry Booth to exercise was too much, too excessive. And the corruption in the land kind of deals operated through the Australian crook did not help the image of Tony Belair. And he had already been correctly accused of, colluding in the genocide of the Iraqis and the Afghanis, to collude with George W. Bush. And we say all of that because if, and it is a possibility, it doesn't look like a probability at the moment, but it is a possible kind of scenario. If Boris Johnson, the congenital liar, according to the French ambassador, who has just returned to France or has retired after several years serving as the French ambassador. Boris Johnson, of course, is a congenital liar. If the congenital liar, Boris Johnson, is replaced by somebody who may be a Labour Party kind of member, then the level of morality, the level of accountability, transparency is not necessarily going to be of a higher quality and standard. That is the point I'm making. And that is the point I'm making in the year of 2021, which is the 100th year of the Poplar councillors in Tower Hamlets in East London. Well, it wasn't Tower Hamlets in 1921, but it became part of Tower Hamlets, Poplar. The Poplar councillors stand for the Poplar ratepayers and the people hit with poverty and were being penalized by the then conservative government. Those Poplar councillors stood up for principles, the founding principles of the Labour Party, founding aims of the Labour Party. And not all of them were themselves Labour Party members either. The one that became more kind of widely known later was George Lansbury, after whom the Lansbury ward of the Tower Hamlets Council is named. And we are here at this stage talking still about the accountability of the state and the elected post holders. And the wider context is, of course, the various issues surrounding Shamima Begum and the legal kind of actions. And the latest court ruling, dated the 26th of February, by the Supreme Court, UK Supreme Court, that ruled against her and ruled in favor of the UK Home Office. What we are talking about is the compliance with the due process, rule of law, and the duties to have access, equal and fair access to fair trial. Article 6. Article 6 of the European Convention on Human Rights, or the Human Rights Convention as it is now known roughly. Article 6 is about the fair trial, the right to fair trial. Now, the fair trial is a misleading phrase because it should be described or replaced by having access to fair access and equal access to the due process as exercised by an impartial court or tribunal. So let's stick with fair trial because that is the wording as it is on the published form of the convention. Now, this ruling by the Supreme Court actually legitimizes hundreds of illegitimate things that have been said and done in violation of the obligations under the treaties that the UK is still a member of or signatory to. And those have been violations against the rights that are enshrined in the declarations and articles and conventions, which would apply to Shamima Begum's claims based on the evidence. And as I said in the previous edition, the contents of the Court of Appeal ruling, which was temporarily in favor of Shamima Begum, remember what I'm saying, temporarily, because it has been overturned now. That was the subject of the appeal by the UK government and the Home Office, as currently fronted by Priti Patel. And that is the appeal by the Home Office that the Supreme Court has upheld and against Shamima Begum. Now, students of jurisprudence, that is to say, the actual trend and the bias and the contents and the kind of general characteristics of a judicial system as evident in the actual decisions and the so-called reasoning for a particular decision. So the English jurisprudence, of which I have been a keen and consistent student for a very long time, the English jurisprudence, which also represents the UK jurisprudence in general references, is a particularly nasty, corrupt, dishonest, and racist jurisprudence. I mean, the first, or one of the first Asian so-called court judges, I mean, he was a junior judge, not a very senior judge, but he was a junior one. But because of the brainwashing to the fact that any non-white person is inferior compared to the white person in any field, that's the result of racist brainwashing. But Mota Singh, a Sikh man, a Sikh licensed law trader, became a judge, one of the early ones in the decades following 1947. Mota Singh became a judge in the English court system. And reading Mota Singh's judgments that are part of the jurisprudence, general jurisprudence, it is very clear that Mota Singh has always been mentally corrupt and a servile one at that, and a stooge of the racists. But most of the ignorant members of the public kind of note the appointment of X or Y to a post, either as a judge or whatever, as in itself an achievement, evidence of their achievement. What they actually are kind of prone to confuse is the careerist appointment with the moral achievement. That is not a moral achievement at all. For instance, it is known as a matter of record that quite a few people from addresses in Tower Hamlets have been given this thing called MBE or similar. And that thing has been, quote, celebrated by having meetings and expressions of congratulations, etc., on the basis that the giving of these MBEs to these people is the same as acknowledging or admitting by the state, by the monarch, by Brenda, Queen Elizabeth II, and the British state, that these individuals have done something morally good. But that's not the case at all, because nobody has ever explained the truth or published the truth about how these individuals get to the point of being given this MBE, OBE, whatever. So that is a secret. And so long as it remains secret, it is not known what the evidence was for what the independent or the objective evidence was or might have been for giving these individuals MBEs or OBEs or whatever, or CBEs. So given that there is no access to the actual truth of the process that underlay the giving of these things, it can be asserted safely on the evidence that this is a corrupting process, no less corrupt than what the late Ayub Khan did after he staged the coup, military coup, on the 28th of October 1958. Not long after he became the martial law head of the regime in then United Pakistan, he began giving tamgas, awards, to any number of people on the alleged basis that they deserved it because they had done something good. Nothing could be further from the truth. Ayub Khan was a liar, and he corrupted the whole political kind of system. And he made it even more corrupt by giving all these tamgas, tamga-e-khidmat, tamga this, that, and the other. Corrupt to the core. And the equivalent or the similar thing that is done here in the UK is as corrupt and as corrupting. And therefore, anyone who has been given a post like the kind of, let's call it gong, big gong, miniature gong, middle gong, medium term gong, and big, small gong, they are allowed, and they shouldn't be allowed to use the fact that they've got a gong as a mark of some kind of achievement. That should be declared an offense. And people carrying the MB or OB or CB should be prosecuted for abusing something that has no legal basis whatsoever. Giving an honor, so-called, without explaining why, poses a serious threat to the due process and the requirements of accountability. For example, one so-called recipient of this MBE or OBE was publicly condemned as a crook. Not that only one could be condemned publicly as a crook, but one was. The others weren't, but they could be also. So this one was condemned as a crook, and no action was taken based on the allegation. And no investigation was carried out. resulting from the allegation that this one was a crook. That shows the illegality of the whole system and the illegality of the judicial process and the illegality of the prosecution process and the legal process, whatever. Earlier I said English jurisprudence. That is an advisedly stated description. Although it is called United Kingdom, the sum total of the UK judicial bureaucracy is actually based on England in London. So the English court system is the correct one because of the evidence. And English court system is imposed on the Welsh, Northern Irish system. It's not imposed on the Scottish ones because of historical differences pre-existing before the kind of agreement 300 years ago between Scotland and England. So when Kerry and Dylan, the dog, are accused of running the number 10, what this raises is a number of constitutional law questions. I mean, where is the authority for anyone other than the one that is an elected MP, who, as the leader of the majority of MPs, becomes then the leader of the government with the approval of Brenda, the Queen Elizabeth II, the monarch? Where is the constitutional authority or basis or foundation? When, as I said, the Tony Blair was incumbent as Prime Minister, a lot of excesses, including corruption by the family in grabbing hold of land, came out in the public. But neither Sherry Blair or Sherry Booth, nor Tony Blair himself, nor any of their children who have benefited or have become millionaires now as a result of, or as resulting from many of the property deals, none of those was prosecuted. Remember what we're saying. We're saying this not long after Donald Trump was ousted. And even after that, he was impeached for the second time. There is nothing that is known to exist in the so-called British Constitution, or rather unwritten Constitution, that has actually been implemented in a comparable way to the USA. That is to say, a head of the government accused of wrongdoing, either directly, personally, or through his family or spouse, has been impeached. If anyone has been impeached, it would have been hundreds of years ago in Britain. So number one, there is an emptiness, there is a void, there is a limbo for the people, the democracy. The post holder, criminal, wrongdoer, and his spouse or his family, immediate family that is, because although Johnson has got a relationship with Carrie Simons as he's still his fiancée, he is very much linked with children he had with other people. And Marina Wheeler is the one that has had most children with Johnson before the divorce. But none of the wrongdoings by Johnson, either as the current incumbent or by Tony Blair or by any of the former ministers while in government office, has been prosecuted. And going back just for a brief kind of update on Mota Singh. Mota Singh is a Sikh man, is a complete and utter mental slave. I'm saying this on the evidence. But none of the licensed law traders of either African or Asian background would say that. Not even Sibghatullah Qadri. Now, Sibghatullah Qadri is one of the licensed law traders who is now given an additional level of quote QC, claims to have been a campaigning barrister. I have spent time trying to work in campaigns alongside with Sibghat Qadri, and I found that he was as corrupt as anybody else. When it came to actually standing up for the assumption or the assertions, Sibghat Qadri came apart. One of the reasons why all of these licensed law traders, lying ones, cannot understand me, why I do the things that I do. Simple answer to Sibghat Qadri and to the dozens of others that I could name but will not name. This is the simple answer, the truth. The pursuit of my campaigns and campaigning questions on the basis of your claims and your corrupt behavior is the truth. You have none of you has given me any answers on the legal evidential questions that I have been putting. One of the lawyers who I also worked with was the late Rudy Narayan, also a licensed law trader. As compared with Sibghat Qadri, Rudy Narayan was less successful in terms of getting to the point of being recognized as a barrister because he was often at loggerheads and in confrontation with the judges, many of the judges. I have no problem with him having issues against judges. And I say before proceeding on this one that Rudy Narayan was less servile than Mota Singh and his ilk. But the fact that Rudy Narayan was less servile than the likes of Mota Singh in itself does not constitute any basis for saying that Rudy Narayan was less corrupt. Because on many occasions, Rudy Narayan, who was supposedly part of campaigns that I was actively involved in about legal rights and rights against racist courts and judiciary and the allied elements and agencies. Rudy Narayan lied after giving solemn undertaking at meetings, committee meetings, campaign meetings, not to make any statement unless the whole committee agreed in advance. Rudy Narayan thus turned out to be a very shallow individual. He thought that he, by breaking the promises with us, would get the headline. He often did get the mention, but it did not actually amount to progressing the campaign in any way, any shape or form. In fact, it had the effect of delaying us because it then arose and raised questions about the integrity of the position of the campaign. One of the reasons why this Khoodeelaar campaign and other campaigns that I have led and organized and am organizing, the most important factor in getting action, campaigning action, to the point of success in terms of defeating the target of the campaign is the integrity of the campaign. What Rudinarayan did was broke the integrity. And he ended up doing this all over the place. So he was not successful in establishing himself as the campaigner. He did make a lot of noise, he did. And what we have seen in Tower Hamlets, and we are back now talking about Shamima Begum, what we have seen in Tower Hamlets is that elected councillors who are silent and have been silent about Shamima Begum are doing the silencing or the staying silent as they have been because they don't want to lose the career benefits that they will risk losing if they spoke out about what they know is going on to their knowledge inside the Labour Party in Tower Hamlets Council. Now, when we did the campaign for the market and the community in Crisp Street in Lansbury Ward, in Poplar generally, not Poplar Ward, because Poplar Ward is also in existence, but it should not be confused with Poplar, the area. One of the things that we noticed was that people are making a lot of appearances on a satellite television channel, particularly, and talking about Poplar Haque against or doing things against the Crisp Street Market by stallholders and the community. And repeatedly, time and again, it became clear that these people had no connection in their minds. They lacked the necessary connection in their minds between what they correctly said was wrong on the part of Poplar Haque and the Tower Hamlets Council and what needed to be done to stop them. I made about a dozen or so kind of clear suggestions with a number of people that appeared on these programs, both alongside with me and on their own on separate broadcasts. And I specifically said that we had to go out in the street and do the campaign. We can only talk about it on the programs, but we cannot materialize the actual campaign by just talking. We have to do something more than that. All these people agreed. But when it came to doing the things that they agreed to do, they didn't do it. Now, I'm not saying that they were behaving as crooks, but they were behaving as not understanding what they were themselves saying. And I'm saying this because currently there is a thing called a campaign for scrapping the mayor, elected mayor post. And I'm reminded of the recent past, and I'm going to say it and make it as an updated statement. If the people refuse to keep to the agreement they make and the announcement they make to be the agreement to actually oppose the elected mayor, then they will lose it. And the danger is that they will lose it because of the COVID and other complications in terms of transport and contracts, but also because they are, all of them individually, and when it comes together collectively, not courageous enough, not honest enough. And they will lose it also by pretending to the public that they are doing something while no other action can be taken because somebody is doing something, so others will allow them to finish doing the thing or get on with doing the things to stop the mayor system. And by the time it is finished, the deadline would be gone. And Tower Hamlets will be lumbered with another 10 or 12 years of the corrupt system. Think about that. This is not acceptable, and you must withdraw this campaign or withdraw from the campaign and say that you can't do it. You need something else. And say it now. This is end of February. Only March and April left, just about. Admit it and stop lying, because effectively you are lying. You are not doing the necessary thing to scrap the mayor. And I must say that some of the intruders into the campaign are actually working for Lutfur Rahman. They are Labour Party persons, but they are actually, in operational terms, intruders for the Lutfur Rahman side. And Lutfur Rahman's side is putting in everything to get Lutfur Rahman back in post as a elected mayor. When the ITV News and Rohit Kachru recorded that interview originally with the biological father of Shamima Begum in Bangladesh, what did it produce? What did it show? Quite apart from the words that I have referred to already, what did it mean? If it meant anything, it meant that those who receive public funding or receive public approval on the basis that they are working for the community in Tower Hamlets, that shows that those are failing or neglecting or lying or doing all of those things, because they haven't come out. The ITV News couldn't find anyone in Tower Hamlets, for heaven's sake. ITV News couldn't find anyone in Tower Hamlets to put themselves on the record in an authoritative, dignified, and substantial way, giving the commentary that I'm giving and giving the analysis that I'm giving. That showed that all these publicly funded operatives have been lying. Many of them have the dress, the appearance of having the beard and all the rest of it, designed to impress people with their devoutness. But they are bearded liars. These are bearded liars whose number exceeds tolerable number of bearded liars. So the bearded liars at every stage have been lying and been in denial. And to use a colloquial English term, the least of these liars are wafflers. They waffle. Many of the waffling liars are quite notorious and known to the community. Any event, any issue, and they are on the kind of social accounts, social media accounts, spewing idiotic waffling. These are career wafflers and career crooks. Let's give a contextual analysis. It is established in the Islamic narrative that when the day of judgment comes, there will be 70 plus categories of mullahs or alims who would be seen as wrongdoers, as sinners. Now imagine 70, not just groups, but even 70 alims or mullahs in Tower Hamlets. Think about that. count up to the 70 and see if any of them meets the condition of being a sinner in the way that the Islamic narrative says. If it is the case that as many as 70 of them or 70 categories of them would be found to have been sinners, imagine the reality of the community. Only because these are dressed with the beard and the other outfit that together constitute the appearance of a, quote, devout Muslim. Don't think that that is the same thing as they are doing the devout Islamic rightful thing. Too many mullahs on the record are known to have been child abusers in Tower Hamlets. Too many of them have been known, some of them have been convicted of being abusers of children, sexual abusers of children. This is not something that occurs or features on the so-called ethnicity-linked media outlets. And it goes on, the list goes on. So what Shamima Begum has been a victim of, or Shamima Begum and the 3 other friends, and I'm dating them, their kind of location, say before February 2015. Because after February 2015, their status in public became subject to legitimately raised questions. But until then, they were not known. So I am assuming innocence in the main on their part. And whatever wrongs they have been actually involved in doing or engaged in doing, was not affected by the presumption of innocence on my part, backdating that kind of presumption. And they were legitimately entitled to expect due protection by the Tower Hamlets Council under safeguarding children and also under the Prevent program, quite apart from the other duties that the Tower Hamlets Council has always owed the children, the families, the individuals, and the people in the community. So, what about Ohid Ahmed? Ohid Ahmed, who lives not far from Chris Street Market, while he was in post as a grinning, that is GRINNING, grinning member of the cabinet fronted by Lutfur Rahman, he had also access to abusing the council's resources, as highlighted by various reports, that he employed or ordered council personnel to carry out exclusive cleaning of the surroundings of his home address in London E14. That is number one. Number two is he featured many times in propaganda events which were described as walking. He was walking with the police, Tower Hamlets members of the Metropolitan Police, whoever they were. And he was doing that as a propaganda to say that he was ensuring community safety. Now look at this logically and factually and ordinarily. Would anyone think that a councillor or whatever walking through Brick Lane or walking through Whitechapel Road or walking through Commercial Street or Commercial Road or East India Road or Poplar High Street, walking accompanied by a number of actually serving police persons, would that walk, however longer, through however length of the street concerned, deter crimes being taking place? For a start, these walks would never come across an actual crime, physical crime being committed. Common sense. Criminals should not be committing crimes in front of the police or in front of a party or persons from the council accompanied by police. So it's a complete, total, utter lie to say that that kind of walk amounted to Ohid Ahmed doing anything against crime. Criminals often commit crime. Committing crime and secrecy go hand in hand. They won't commit crimes in front of witnesses. So the fact that council employees even had the stupid gall and idiocy to announce that Ohid Ahmed and police personnel would be doing the walkabout or whatever, and that was part of the community safety. Where was Ohid Ahmed when Ajmal Ahmed was murdered by his murderers near the school? Where was the cabinet member, deputy mayor, and also cabinet member for responsibility, allegedly, for safety, community safety? Where was Ohid Ahmed when the Langdon Park pupil was murdered by his murderers? As I said before, I did go to the council and I sought answers from Ohid Ahmed about what he was doing on issues like the murder of that boy. Ohid Ahmed failed to give the answer. And Ohid Ahmed made physically dishonest movements in order to have the meeting with him finish as fast as possible. If he denies that, let him deny it on the record and I shall give the details. Now, that is only a symptom of the stupidity of the behavior of the deputy mayor, Ohid Ahmed. And Ohid Ahmed was able to stupidly behave in that way because Lutfur Rahman was running a stupid, stooges cabinet. And we say that that is enough evidence to stop the mayor post. Otherwise, children in the borough are facing several serious levels of unsafety and threats to the future. It's not a theory. If anyone knows Tower Hamlets and can physically reach any part of these crime spots, let's say, starting from Shadwell, DLR, an overground or London kind of railway station. Shadwell, 1, and the spot behind Brick Lane and reaching up to Greater X Street, or the spot near the East London Mosque and near the, or including the Parfait Street, Mardle Street, and Romford Street, and the spot opposite the kind of behind the Royal London Hospital and other spots behind the Cambridge Heath Road behind the old Bethnal Green Road and behind the Kukam House, not far from the junction of the Brick Lane and Bethnal Green Road. These are some examples. The other one I said is Chicksand Street. These are places where, for years, mainly Bangladeshi male young persons have been allowed to congregate and indulge in antisocial behavior. None of the local councillors, none of the parents of these young persons has ever been seen even approaching them. And their behavior constitutes brazen antisocial and criminal activity, intimidation of the persons passing by. And no ethnicity-linked outfit, no so-called television channel has actually examined, reported, or admitted this going on. Why? So it shows that Tower Hamlets Council is not only failing seriously targeted victims of all kinds of threats to their safe life and safeguard. It's openly allowing brazen criminality and antisocial activities and intimidation of passers-by and the community to take place all over the borough. Where do these criminals end up? They don't end up with successful lives. They cannot. So even the criminals, as young as those who are whatever the ages, are being let down. The criminals should be rescued, protected from their own criminal tendencies and propensities. So they're not being protected by the people wearing the beards and presenting themselves as alims and kind of respectable, faithful people in terms of faith, observing faith. So Shamima Begum has been betrayed by all of these people. And I have not even begun to examine the actual contents of the behavior of the licensed law traders, let alone the actual courts, which I shall be doing in due course. Shamima Begum deserves accountability from these people and her friends, even if they are sadly dead. But Shamima Begum and her friends are entitled to justice. That is what I'm saying. For themselves and for the sake of the others. That's what I'm saying. The behavior of the local schools. Now remember, anyone who has noticed this and probably thought that I'm not using my experience. One comment I've received during the last 2 hours or so suggested that I should use my experience. Now, let me make it very clear. This is what my experience is based on. Everything I'm saying is based on my direct experience. To translate this into common, ordinary things, I have been acting as a legal advocate, legal rights advocate. It's not something I'm making up. That is what I've been doing. So deal with it a bit more. Some people say that you cannot be a lawyer if you don't go to a court. That's not true. I, in fact, avoid going to courts. Not because I cannot face the court, but the court cannot face me. That is to say, all the courts that are within access, if you like. County courts, magistrates court, crown court, whatever, high court. These courts are manned and womaned by unfit persons or dishonest persons. And I shall go into details about unfit and dishonest persons, descriptions, another time. What actually happens in litigation or court-related action is that most of the activities can be done without going to court or having a hearing. It can be done before the hearing, and so that is what I focus on. And in a long campaigning kind of range, I have done literally, as I'm doing now, literally thousands of cases that I'm dealing with, issues, without going to court. And most of the issues that I've dealt with have been done at the highest level. And none of the licensed law traders on the other sides has ever succeeded in pointing to anything that I've said that is inaccurate or factually unsustainable or evidentially, legally unsustainable. I have done that thousands of times. And I cannot see anything in any judgment, including the judgments issued in the name of the Supreme Court or in the previous form, the Judicial Committee of the House of Lords, which is what it was. None of them has been able to point out anything that is legally weak, evidentially unclear, etc., in anything I have put forward. If I charged, just for a comparison, if I charged at the rate of David Penick, quote QC, as he charged the Manchester City Football Club over their instruction to him to deal with the ruling by the European Football Regulating Authority concerned, because there are several authorities, then I would be charging £20,000 per day. That is to say 7 hours, £20,000. Divide £20,000 by 7 and you get the hourly kind of charge. That would take the total amounts I could have charged to hundreds, thousands of millions of pounds. Yes. So which ones of the licensed law traders betrayed Shamima Begum? At what point and why? Because, as I said, the 48-page ruling against her, as read out by so-called Lord Reed, the current president of the Supreme Court, that did not contain any substance. I am asserting that did not contain any substance at all. It's all prejudice and ignorance and stupidity and bias and illegality. And the motivation has been, central motivating force has been racism and anti-Muslim hostility. In this case, in other cases, they would be hostile, racistly hostile, and inimical to whatever race or ethnicity they would be targeting their hostility at. And there is no forum. There is no legal forum, constitutional forum existing in Britain that Shamima Begum can appeal to. There are international forums, and we shall be actively exploring all the avenues, to find that Shamima Begum can independently seek justice. Anyone who says that I'm probably ignoring any wrongdoings on Shamim Begum's part, needs to note what I'm saying. I have said this before, but I'm saying it again. I'm not saying Shamima Begum should be excused. Any of the crimes, genuine crimes that she actually has committed, she must be held to account for everything that she has done wrong. Criminally, in any other way, civil wrong as well. But that does not take away from her the right to fair access to due process and justice. That's what I'm saying. So we shall be continuing whenever the next program is.